Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the endowed chairs and professors and faculty of St. Louis University.
Prestige, tradition, pride. The latest commencement ceremony at St. Louis University in Missouri. But like nearly all U.S. institutions, there is slavery deep in the soil. Now what's rising from the ground of places like St. Louis University? The historical truth of the free labor of Black people.
And we were here since its inception when William DeBerg, he was the first bishop. He was the founder of St. Louis Academy, which in turn turned into St. Louis University that was here. And from the very beginning, our ancestors were here.
Now it's time to reap what they sowed in Black land.
And now,
as a brown person, you just feel so invisible.
That's not fiction. Where we're from.
Brothers and sisters, I welcome you to this joyful day.
We celebrate freedom. Where we are.
Get on the ground!
I know someone heard something.
And where we're going.
We the people means all the people.
The Black Information Network presents Blackland with your host, Vanessa Tyler.
Every part of this country's history is touched by America's shame. So no surprise that men of God had slaves. In fact, the Jesuits built their institutions on the backs of Black people who to this day can find their branch on the family tree of history. Robin Proudie is the executive director of the Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved, better known as DSLUE. Robin, welcome.
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for having me.
We know slavery fueled America's wealth. How did the Jesuits play into this, and how many people did they enslave?
Well, research shows that the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, have been enslaving people around the world since their origins in around 1543. Over 1,000 enslaved Black people they owned and trafficked.
It's in their records. Who was bought and sold? How much? St. Louis University decided to research this and found descendants in today's America.
I learned the connection to my ancestors that were enslaved by the Jesuits. In 2019, at the time I was living in the Washington, D.C. area, and I received a letter from the Slavery History, Memory, and Reconciliation Project. That was a joint initiative between the Society of Jesus and St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri. They decided to study their ties to slavery. So from 2016 to 2019, they did the research in the Jesuit archives at the Archdiocese here, and at St. Louis University. They began to find names of people that were, on ledgers, on manifests, bill of sales, and these people were our ancestors. So that letter detailed all of that, and they asked me and those of the descendants in Missouri to come in. And this was in 2019, 2020 to share this information. And then, of course, COVID happened, things kind of slowed down. And because my elders here could not go in, I decided to hop online like we are virtually and continue this work with the researchers. So that is how I got involved extensively. And it was just fascinating what I began to see. And when you begin to see the names of the people in your bloodline, it is just a life-changing experience.
Robin Proudie says the Jesuits' business records, including the human property, detailed a history she never knew. Records trace back to 3 couples the Jesuits brought over from Maryland to work the land in St. Louis. The year 1823. Tom and Polly, Moses and Nancy, Isaac and Suki. Her ancestors' free sweat equity is deep in the university.
So Mother Henrietta Mills, my grandmother's great-grandmother, she was born into slavery. She married our great-grandfather, Charles F. Chavon, and they had 10 children. The first 3 were born into slavery, but her last son Louis Siobhan, well, all the sons were musicians. They were talented musicians. Um, but Louis was a little bit more special. Even my grandmother's grandfather, Lincoln, we come from the Lincoln was the eighth grandchild. And you notice they named him Lincoln after Abraham Lincoln after the emancipation, right? And so that's my grandmother's grandfather. And but Lewis he was born in 1884. He was considered one of the best musicians, ragtime at the time in St. Louis. And he did a song with Scott Joplin, well-known Scott Joplin. They composed a song called The Heliotrope Bouquet. It would be classified as a hit record, a platinum record today.
That was huge. Legendary Black composer Scott Joplin called the father of ragtime and her talented relative, Louis Siobhan, teamed up for a song that was the sound of the times.
And yes, he was considered a jazz great. He's in several books they said they ushered in jazz through ragtime. He was the only African-American, at that time they called him mulatto person, in the 1904 World's Fair, where we have archives where he won the gold medal. They said Chauvin wins a beautiful gold medal as the pianist for a musical contest that he won.
Her other ancestors, not as famous, also leaves behind a legacy, a thriving institution of higher learning.
St. Louis University has a $1.7 billion endowment. They have several investment properties. They just invested in I think it's 170 room building, luxury apartments. And they have, it's a 272 acre campus.
So now what? How should the university repair what was taken?
A friend of mine, Professor Devarian Baldwin, wrote a book called In the Shadow of the Ivory Tower, How Universities Plunder Our Cities. And once I read that book, it really helped to solidify my advocacy in advocating for repair from St. Louis University, because I saw even after enslavement how they continue to capitalize and benefit off our communities. So we wanted to honor our ancestors by preserving the history. We wanted to educate the public because this is so important. And we wanted to engage and advocate for repair.
It looked like they were on their way to do just that. There would be a public apology, the media would cover it, but something happened. Call it miscommunication, maybe even a sign of the times, with universities nationwide in the crosshairs of politics. Anything involving Black people scrutinized. But no one saw this coming, and it was public.
As a symbol of our breaking the covenants of enslavement, of separation, of family dysfunction, all of the above.
That's from a DSLUE dinner to honor the Black ancestors and the elders. Relatives vowed to make it right. They had been working with St. Louis University since the university reached out about 5 years ago with the surprising news. The free labor of their ancestors built the institution.
We had meetings and we came up on a 10-point plan. The first point was a formal apology. So when they began to set a date for that, and we were very excited, and we also talked about the how we would approach this process. Have rigorous discussions about each of our points, meet with the Board of Trustees to each board date. And so when we set this date for the apology, which was March 26, 2025, we had meetings.
Repairing the pain was not as smooth as planned. Robin Proudie says with some of their issues being overlooked, and she says the university taking a position that surprised them just hours before the public apology, Descendants would not get what they were hoping for.
And they approved the apology, a monument, and then they said everything else is off the table, cash payments. And they said they were going to do a report, institutional report, what every institution does, the report that they conducted. And I said, okay, so you guys this is your commitment period. This is what she said, yes, this is what the university is committing to.
Which resulted in a bit of breaking news.
Descendants of slaves are calling out St. Louis University after plans for a public apology fell through.
The university canceled a prayer service where it was expected to share an apology for participating in slavery. This comes after a group of slave descendants took issue with the school's message.
The public prayer service was off.
So we thought about why would they do that, and we needed some answers, and so we decided until we just couldn't move forward in good faith at this time.
Those relatives who flew into St. Louis to hear the apology all these years later returned home. No apology, no agreement to their 10-point reparation plan.
There are a lot of universities that are studying their ties to slavery. They've moved on. Some have put up monuments and have done different reconciliation efforts. But no one has really did a report or a study to analyze the cost of the labor.
Other Jesuit schools used slave labor, including Georgetown and Loyola universities. DSLUE did calculate the cost. At St. Louis, the estimate of slave labor? Astonishing.
And they came up with that cost from 1823 to 1865, 70 ancestors that were trafficked at that time. And that came out to be $360 million on the low end, and with interest, $74 billion, what that cost would be.
Everything now in America is very much colored by the Trump administration. And I'm just wondering whether, universities are scared to death.
Yes.
They've got a threat hanging over their heads for federal funding for just any infraction. And I'm just wondering, did you feel a change of heart lately?
Yeah, and you know what? Being a person who keeps abreast of everything that's going on, I'm a Navy veteran. I worked in Intel at the Pentagon for years, and so I took that into consideration. I understood that fear, but at the same time, this is not a DEI project. I mean, it really isn't. It's one people group harmed another. One community harmed another. It's a human rights. It's not. This is how I see it. We understood that could have been the change, because it did change somewhat. We've been waiting for 5 years, and it's always something. It was COVID at first. But during COVID, they told us it was COVID. But yet they still managed to build a 20-bedroom, 5-guest bedroom, $27 million Jesuit residential facility on the campus of the university for the Jesuit faculty during COVID. It took them less than 18 months, and they moved in. We had talked to the president at that same time in 2021, and that's what they were doing. But for us, it has always been something. But you can't, in the last hour, just do things, and that doesn't build trust. We've been through a lot as a community, and we are waiting for them to really step up, and we're not going to be used as a photo op.
In a statement, the university acknowledges there is more work to do with the families who demand not just an apology, but cash payments, a monument, scholarships, and more. After all, this university stands on the backs of the generations of resilient Black people from the past. What does it do to you guys inside when you look at the buildings your ancestors built?
Oh my goodness. I'm working on a documentary, and I talk about, I'm literally, really seriously, when I just walk around that campus, I feel them. I feel, I feel the presence of my ancestors. I feel the church that we were going to have the ceremony in. That church is a new church built after emancipation, but my great great aunt Matilda Tyler, who was Henrietta Mills' aunt. She actually, in 1847, by that time, she was married to another enslaved person, and she had 7 children. Her 2 daughters, unfortunately, passed through because of the rigors of what she had to do. But she worked from 1847 to 1857 and paid the Jesuits for not only her freedom, but all her 5 boys' freedom. And I have in the minutes when they freed them, their emancipation documents. And on the ledger, when you show $50 today, 1849, $30, $300, which is like $9,000 in today's money, it says Matilda, servant, to be freed upon paying this amount, and this money will be appropriated to St. Francis Xavier College Church. So all that money was appropriated to build this new beautiful church that we were actually going to have the apology in. And so that was just going to be a rewarding thing to have her descendants standing there and the university apologizing for enslaving them. The home was multidimensional, and so should be the repair.
Wow. Robin Proudie of DSLUE, the Descendants of St. Louis University Enslaved. Thank you for telling your story, really our story.
Oh, thank you so much for letting our voices shine and tell these stories. It's so important. Thank you, Vanessa.
In your heart, in your podcast to you. Salutations of power to the ancestors.
Be sure to like and subscribe to Blackland. I'm Vanessa Tyler. I will have a new episode next week.